welcome to Relish Books. Today I am going to be reviewing the second book that I've read so far on my 2024 book list, and this is Winesburg, Ohio by Sherwood Anderson. So I read this one, as I talked about in one of my earlier videos, because it has been so highly recommended by a lot of writers. I had never heard of it before, and then I was looking at a list of some of authors' favorite books, and it kept popping up. Some really big names were saying that this is one of the greatest books ever. And I should have known because I am not a William Faulkner fan. I've only read one of his books, and that was too much, at least for me back then. I might give him another try at some point, but William Faulkner said he wished he had written this book, and that should have told me that I might not like it, but a lot of people said that they really liked it, so I was excited to try it. And it is a group of short stories. It's kind of a very loose episodic novel. There's a collection of short stories, but they're kind of connected by being set in the same town, and there is some recurring central characters. So it was published in 1919. I don't know a whole lot about Sherwood Anderson. He was one of those writers from a time when I think there was this idea that to be a literary writer, you had to go to the city and, live in this very free-spirited and kind of wild lifestyle, which fortunately has been kind of abandoned, but some of those writers did put out some really good work. So I guess he was a successful businessman. He grew up in a small town in Ohio that Winesburg is kind of based on. He went on to become a successful businessman, and then he had a nervous breakdown in 1912 and abandoned his business, abandoned his family, and went to the city to be a writer. And apparently he had a lot of very mediocre work surrounding Winesburg, but in 1919 he came out with this one, which was an instant critical success. And he got a lot of acclaim for it and surprises. I don't really know. It would be interesting to look up. I don't really know how many just people and readers read it other than critics and authors. That would be kind of interesting because I'd never heard of it, but that doesn't mean it wasn't popular in its time. So anyway, I'm just going to talk about it a little bit. So in some ways it reminds me of Dandelion Wine. It feels like almost like a darker, more adult maybe version of Dandelion Wine. And first of all, there's not really, as far as the setting doesn't make me against it. I like this kind of setting, small town with a bunch of short stories. I love Dandelion Wine. I'm a huge Woebegone fan. And so I like this setting fine. I like the style fine. And the writing is pretty good. I like what some people have said, talking about this kind of mixture of strength and weakness that's in Sherwood Anderson's writing, because you're going along and it just feels pretty normal, and then sometimes there will be these really great moments shining through. So he did have a lot of potential and a lot of, he did have talent. Overall, though, I think maybe my expectations were too high in the first place because these really great writers were saying how good it was. So maybe I was expecting something just insanely good, and it's not that great. But there are some really good moments in the writing. There are some really good grasping at feelings that I think that every person has that are really, really hard to put into words, really hard to describe. Some of the scenes of the characters, especially being in nature, where they're going along and, maybe they're at a point in their life where, it's like a turning point or something, and suddenly everything becomes really clear and everything feels really big. And obviously I'm not describing it well because it is something that's very hard to describe, but I think some feelings that we just all have as people at certain moments in our lives, and I think he did that really well. But ultimately, the book is about a collection of what he calls grotesques, these characters in this town who are like oddities or outcasts or hermits, these very cut off people with these usually very big inner lives in their minds, or unfulfilled wants and desires, a lot of disappointment. I would say, it's called Winesburg, Ohio, a group of tales of Ohio's small town life. I would say Winesburg, Ohio, Tales of Despair, honestly, because it's very dark and it's very unhopeful. And that's what I don't like about it. You look at a book like Dandelion Wine, which I eventually need to do a video about because it's one of my favorites. And it's taking a look at all these different people, but ultimately it's looking at life and the joy of living and the idea of finding great meaning and excitement in these small town everyday things. And Winesburg, Ohio is kind of the opposite. It's finding a lot of discontent and meaninglessness in these small town things. And I think with his mindset of going to the city, he was in a sense really putting down the small town life, and like the people there are wasted and doing nothing, and the old people that stayed there that meant to do something more really have just missed their chance in life, and they're just kind of dwindling out to the end of their days. And I really don't like that. I really disagree with that. That being said, though, there are some very interesting characters. I found it a little unbelievable, but you have to just accept, it's fiction. It's largely exploring the human mind. I found it a little hard to accept that there were this many odd people in this one small town, like truly extraordinarily odd people. A lot of them, we might say were unbalanced, mentally unbalanced. Some of them kind of just, have nervous breakdowns of their own. And I think Anderson was really putting himself into a lot of these people. That's my guess. A lot of their thoughts. And at first, each character seems quite different. But towards the end of the book, you start to realize that they're all very similar. They all have these similar feelings. And it makes it a little more monotonous, but at the same time, I do think that that's on purpose, because it is showing like the connection between everybody and the connection between these unsatisfied people. People with these feelings are similar in a lot of ways. There is like the chapters are pretty unconnected. There is like a single character that kind of connects everything together. So there's all these outcasts of society, and the one person in every story that it seems like they'll turn to and talk to is this young reporter, George Willard. And he's not one of the grotesques, but he is, he does have some of the same feelings. So it's like he's a, for lack of a better word, nobody's really normal, but he's kind of the normal person that is the connecting link between all these super odd stories. And so that kind of holds the book together a little better, but at the same time, he's not a very good character. He was really boring. He's kind of, I think he's supposed to be. That's the thing. I feel like everything that I can say about the book as far as criticizing it was intentional. So I don't really know how much I can actually criticize it, but yeah, he's a pretty boring character. He's this young man who's a reporter in the town, but he means to go to a big city and get a job on a paper in a big city. And, the book kind of takes place, it feels like, over the last, year or so that he's in Winesburg, and then it ends with him, getting on the train to move away to the city. And so his feelings are very, his feelings of excitement and just struggling with these different things in his youth and all that kind of connect the story to the feelings of all these other people. So I think that's well done. I think that's what kind of, again, holds the book together rather than it just being like this haphazard, jumble. But yeah, I did not really enjoy it. There's a lot that can be said about it. I think there's great literary moments, but ultimately it was just it didn't have any hope. It didn't have any meaning to it. Well, not a lot of, I don't know. Life isn't meaningless, and just because you haven't been fulfilled in one certain aspect of your life doesn't mean you're a waste. And it was really frustrating to see all these people who wanted this one thing, and if they don't get this one thing, then their lives are just destroyed, basically. I think it does make sense, though, if you're coming from the worldview that there's nothing higher in life and all you can achieve is success or glory that you'll be remembered for, or if you're just living, like a lot of the current in the book feels like, if you're just living for your bodily desires. There's a lot of this frustrated love, frustrated understanding, longings for more, while at the same time just living mostly on a purely, fleshly basis. I don't really know how to describe it, but it's like there's nothing higher in the book, and yet these people who say they have a very they're driven maybe by a sexual drive, but at the same time that's not satisfying for them. And so when you come to write a story like this from that mindset, I think there is just going to be a lot of hopelessness and a lot of just darkness. And that's ultimately what I was left feeling from this book, was a lot of unsatisfaction, which I think, again, is kind of the intention. It's about people who are unsatisfied. It's about people who have been frustrated in life. And I definitely feel that in the book. A lot of hopelessness, a lot of despair. And that's all there really is to it. If that was his intention, he did a good job. I'll say that for him. But it's not the kind of book that I think is great. It's not the kind of book I'm going to remember, and definitely not love. There weren't even any characters really to love. There were some interesting ones, some ones that I felt for. But, again, nobody I really cared about or connected with. Obviously, I connected with some of the feelings of the people, because, again, they're feelings that I think every human has. But he kind of left out the higher feelings that humans also have. I don't know. It's a difficult one. I was after I read it, I finished it a few days ago, and I've kind of been putting off talking about it because I felt like it was a really hard one to do. And I feel like everybody who reads it would probably get a pretty different feeling from it. And I understand why certain writers hold it up as being great, but I don't know. Just from what I want from a book, that's the biggest thing that it comes down to when you're trying to review something. It's what did you want from it? What are you looking for when you think of great literature? And for me, it just didn't fulfill those things. It was kind of a disappointment. So I don't know. That is what I think about Winesburg, Ohio. Sorry if this one was a little rambly, but it's an odd book, and I think talking about it can be hard to articulate. So those are my thoughts for today. Thank you. I'll see you next time.